19. Bill and Act making unified appropriations and allocations for the expenditures of the state government, general funds, and other funds, and changing certain provisions of the laws necessary to the proper operations of the state government for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 and June 30th, 2017. Main motion is acceptance of the majority ought to pass as amended before. Chair recognizes Representative from Gloucester, Representative Esplin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request a roll call.
Representative from Gloucester, Representative Esplin, request a roll call. The chair of the roll call is to express the matter. Mr. President, all those desiring roll call will signify in the usual manner. Sufficient number of request a roll call, and roll call is in order. Main motion shall not accept majority ought to pass as amended before. Now there's a question. Chair will vote. Sergeant Long, Secretary of the Chamber. First call absentees. First call absentees. Second call absentees. There's still two members in the seat who have not yet voted. No one member in the seat who has not yet voted. All have voted. Chair will vote for the total. Chair will have to vote 101 and voting affirmative, 47 negative. Motion prevails. First reading bill. Representative Secretary of the bill is sufficient to assist the budget House. Vote for both reading committee amendment A. Representative Secretary of the committee is surveyed as amendment A. Motion to assist the budget of the House. Vote. Chair has Representative from Scotty, Representative McKay.
Mr. Speaker, I present House Amendment B with a filing number of H-448 to Committee Amendment A. Move its adoption and wish to speak to my motion.
Representative Scotty, Representative McKay presents House Amendment B with filing number of H-448 to Committee Amendment A and moves its adoption. Fourth reading, House Amendment B.
House Amendment B is on H-448.
Chair stands Representative Scotty, Representative McKay, for the House Amendment B. House. Vote. Chair has Representative Scotty, Representative McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, men and women of the House. I rise today to speak about the amendment that's before you, attached to the budget. here to say a budget is really a compromise. I think one thing that's clear is it's a true compromise in the work that was done by the Appropriations Committee to build the foundation for what we have today. I'm offering this amendment recognizing the work, legislative leadership, building on that work of appropriations, that bipartisan work. There was a lot of give, there was a lot of take. There's some benefits for both sides here. There's something in it for everybody. Everyone has had to be flexible, and that's for sure, Mr. Speaker. It's been a true compromise. It's been an example of how divided government can actually work. I'd like to talk about some of the highlights in this amendment. Some of the things that are in this budget for our caucus. It's a win in the area of property taxes. We all know that property taxes are one of the most aggressive or regressive taxes out there. It hits a lot of young families, it hits seniors around the state, and it is brutal for those of us in rural Maine. We need to do what we can to help families to establish and build a life in Maine. We need to honor our elders around the state. We need to make sure that they can age in place, and I know you know that, Mr. Speaker. That's why this budget doubles the homestead exemption for all families. So the exemption will go from $10,000 to $20,000. It protects revenue sharing, which we've heard time and time again is so vital. Keeping it at the current level at $62.5 million. We know this funds local communities and is so important to people around the state of Maine. This will keep property taxes in check. It'll help pay for vital services like schools, police, firefighting, snow plowing, and so many more. This budget is really about also recognizing our future. It recognizes, it targets, it makes smart investments that strengthen our economy, and it's essential to our prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I think of our children when I think about the investments that we are making in our children, our students, and our workforce. This budget puts money into Head Start, invests in K through 12 education. It puts an additional $80 million in K through 12 education. It has funds in here for public universities, our community college systems, which everyone in this House knows how much I care about. As we move this forward, it puts more funding into job training so that Maine workers can stay competitive. I know everyone in the House agrees with that piece. Before my caucus, I say, last but not least, this budget is a budget that rejects trickle-down economics. Instead of huge tax breaks for the wealthy, it's a tax cut that targets low and middle-income families. These cuts won't blow a hole in future budgets as they are fully paid for. Rather than 50% of the tax break going to the top 10%, as we've seen proposed earlier in the session, this compromise sends 75% of the benefit to the bottom 90%. This is an income tax cut that's paid for of $140 million, Mr. Speaker. This compromise budget, based on some things that we heard, especially in our caucus, we received dozens of emails, some of us probably even close to hundreds. This compromise budget also protects the home mortgage deduction. We know how important it is and what a bedrock of our party's platform it is to make sure that we grow home ownership in the state of Maine and around the country. It also recognizes the importance of the Earned Income Tax Credit to help low-wage workers. It helps hardworking Mainers stay above the poverty line. This compromise budget makes the credit refundable for up to 5%. This compromise budget also protects Maine's most vulnerable. It helps seniors pay for their medication and health care and increases funding for nursing homes. It supports Mainers struggling with autism and mental illness. It reduces the wait list for services for individuals with intellectual disabilities. Mr. Speaker, this compromise budget also fixes the welfare cliff. It creates a system that alleviates the impact of the welfare cliff. We've heard so much about the welfare cliff, Mr. Speaker. We've put forward a proposal today that alleviates the welfare cliff. The sharp drop-off in benefits that helps place people as recipients to work, and more, it helps their incomes increase. It's really a jobs initiative when you think about it, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot more in this budget, and I could go on, whether it's the additional drug agents, or whether it's the increase in the exemption for military pension, or whether it's the funding about the cold case squad. Because, Mr. Speaker, in the last two sessions, we've spent a lot of time talking about funding the cold case squad. It's an issue that's received bipartisan support, and it's about time we fund it. So I could go on and on, as many folks in this chamber have heard me go on and on in the past, but I won't. I just look forward that when we vote this today, this amendment that's before us receives a strong bipartisan vote, and I thank the men and women of the House, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Republican leadership for their work on this compromise.
Madam President, the House Amendment A be adopted. The chair was in error. Madam President, the House Amendment D be adopted. So, the chair recognizes Representative Rowe Hudson, Representative Shane. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Pro Tem. Men and women of the House. I present House Amendment A to Committee Amendment A with a binding number of H439. Move its adoption and wish to speak to my motion. Representative Pro Hudson, Representative Shane, presents House Amendment A with binding number of H439 to Committee Amendment A and moves its adoption to incorporate House Amendment A. Chair stands for Representative Hudson. Shane for the reading of House Amendment A. This is the House. Vote. Chair recognizes Representative Hudson, Representative Shane. Thank you once again, Mr. Speaker. Men and women of the House, Duchesne is not Acadian French. It's not even St. John Valley French. The Duchesnes on my father's side, the Laplaces on my mother's side, came down from somewhere around Montreal. They weren't Acadian fishermen. I'm pretty sure they were probably fur trappers. I still do not know how my grandfather Duchesne came to me to bury my grandmother, a woman who came here from Lithuania through Ellis Island when she was 9 years old. My wife's maiden name was McCrae. She's Scotch-Irish. She descended from some Irish brothers named Fitzhenry, who fled to Newfoundland as fugitives from the British, who, quite frankly, wanted to hang them. There's nothing like the threat of being hanged to grieve refugees. Well, with the exception of our bouncing brother here, Representative Bear, we all have similar stories. We are a nation of immigrants, a great melting pot. However, our immigrant forebears mostly have one thing in common. They came here legally. We are a kind, compassionate, generous people, but our generosity has limits. Our constituents are picking up the tab, and they have made it clear to me that they are against general assistance for people who are here unlawfully, what some would call illegal aliens. If you are here legally, looking to work legally and contribute to the Maine economy legally, we will help as best we can. These are tough times, and our generosity is constrained by our limited resources. This is a very tough budget, but we will do what we can. However, if you are here illegally, you are beyond the limits of our generosity. Driver line. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this amendment clarifies the eligibility definition of Title 22. It provides that the person who is unlawfully present and failing to follow a lawful process to apply for immigration status is not eligible for general assistance. Not now, not ever. This is a chance for all of us to go on the record and clearly oppose general assistance for illegal aliens by voting yes. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would request a roll call. Representative Hudson, Representative Shane, the roll call, the chair of roll call, so express desire to Mr. President, all those desiring roll call, please signify. Any of the matters, petitioner request a roll call. A roll call is in order. The chair recognizes Representative from Lewiston, Representative from
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I will not be voting for this budget in its current form. To do so would be a betrayal of my principles. Voting to hurt men, women, and children here in Maine, seeking a new life, free of persecution, is unacceptable to me. Voting to deny a helping hand to people far less fortunate than I am, who came here hoping to find peace and freedom. Many seeking asylum from violence and praying for the opportunity to provide for themselves and their families, flies in the face of everything that I stand for. As a Marine, I took great pride in standing up for people that are not in a position to stand up for themselves. How could I do anything less as a legislator without betraying the values the Marines instilled in me? This budget does not take the necessary steps to ensure.
Representative Burr, chair requires Representative Robert Representative Baker prizes.
This budget does not take the necessary steps to ensure that Maine societies are provided a roof over their heads and food to sustain them until they are able to obtain a work permit, get a job, and become successful, productive members of our communities that they so desire to be. I met Natalie in the State House today. Her name is Nima, and she came to the United States from Djibouti. In Djibouti, America has a military installation that serves as a platform for operations to carry out the war on terror, a global conflict that I fought in. Nima is a strong young woman. She came here with her husband. They were the beneficiaries of general assistance for less than 1 year. Once their asylum request was adjudicated and her husband was given a work permit, he got a job at LLB and has been working there for more than 3 years. Nima works for a nonprofit organization helping others like our state fund self-care. She's working on her college degree, and she is pregnant with her child, who will be an American citizen. Failure to act to put into law the affirmative language necessary to continue to provide some small assistance to asylums, and by small I mean less than 1/10 to 1% of this budget, would mean that a woman like Nima, coming from a country where the U.S. has a military base used to support military operations, a country not as secure and not as free as America. Failure to act means that a woman like Nima is not welcome in our state. This is the kind of vote that makes me question just what it is that I am doing in politics. If I won't stand up for the most vulnerable among us, then what am I prepared to fight for? An income tax cut giving 25% of the benefit to the wealthiest 10%. An income tax cut to the top 1%, representing 7,000 Mainers earning more than $370,000 a year, receiving a tax cut of $1,500 a year. Mr. Speaker, I say no. What would I do to protect Maine's vulnerable asylum seekers, to ensure that they receive the help they need to stand on their own and join in the enduring struggle to live the American dream? Mr. Speaker, a better question is what wouldn't I do?
Chair recognizes Representative McGuire, Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise in support of the amendment before us, and I'm frankly ashamed that we are even having this public discussion about whether or not to assist the new Mainers in our state who need just a little help in order to get on the road to the American dream. Cloaked in the guise of welfare reform, even purposefully using incorrect terminology regarding immigration status, the Chief Executive's biennial budget proposed to cut new Mainers from accessing the most basic food and shelter. To me, this would be an appalling breach of what I consider to be basic humanitarian aid. Even worse, to pit the immediate and compelling needs of some vulnerable people against the real needs of other vulnerable populations fabricates false choices. We are not in a fiscal crisis. In fact, today we are passing tax cuts. With the actions of the Chief Executive, a murky court ruling, and difficult budget compromises, today the fate of hundreds of new Mainers in the cities of Portland, Lewiston, Bangor, and Westbrook, who are here legally, hangs in the balance with our votes. The way we treat our most vulnerable speaks to our core values as Maine people, as Americans. How we treat the stranger in our midst is a tenet of all ancient religions, including my own. In fact, my daily reading for today, June the 16th, is from the book of Leviticus, and I quote, "When an alien resides in your land, do not mistreat such a one. You shall treat the alien who resides with you no differently than the natives born among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you too were once aliens in the land of Egypt. I, the Lord, am your God." End quote. Listening hour after hour in appropriations to the testimony against the Chief Executive's proposals to cut general assistance for new Mainers, I couldn't help but think of the famous words inscribed on our Statue of Liberty. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." We are a country of immigrants, the great melting pot, and this has always been our strength. Sadly, sometimes our better angels do not govern us. Historically, nearly every immigrant group has faced resistance on their arrival. But when we shut the door behind us, when we give in to bigotry and narrow-mindedness, those words of welcome in New York make us hypocrites. We are better than this. I urge you to follow my light, and I am grateful for this opportunity to speak.
Chair, recognizes Mr. Young, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. When my grandfather arrived on these shores, he saw those words on the Statue of Liberty, and they meant a great deal to him. For he was fleeing the pogroms of the Cossacks and the Tsars of Russia, who just simply killed him because of his religion, or should they decide not to kill him, to conscript him into the army once again for a 7-year term as that nation went to war yet again in a foolish way. But he did make it to New York and brought his family over subsequently. And if he hadn't, his family would have been wiped out during the Holocaust. So those words mean a lot to me, as I'm sure they mean much to all of us. And they mean a lot to the people for whom this amendment means so much. The people that were out in the hallway as we walked into the chamber this morning. I hope you had a chance to exchange a few words with these people. They are people. They are not blank faces. They are not numbers. I asked as many of them as I could, what's your name? Where do you come from? What did you do in your own country? Every single one of the people that I spoke to, and I spoke to at least a dozen, was somebody that we could be so proud of. They were engineers, they were software designers, social workers, professors. These are the very kind of people that Maine needs. These are the people with the energy and the motivation and the willpower to make the most out of their lives and to share it with their family and their community. How can we turn on that someday? They are the best that the world has to offer. I know these people also because I did some work as a lawyer, well, not in court, but doing some advising through the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Program. This is an organization I have that gives advice to people who are seeking asylum. I ask you, Mr. Speaker, if you know the difference between a lawful refugee and an asylum seeker. Most people don't. The only difference is where that person has filed their application. If they filed it in Africa, for example, they are, and it is granted, they are a refugee. If they do it here, they are an asylum seeker. The requirements, the criteria are exactly the same, and they are tough. You have to be under a definitive threat of death or harm because of your race, because of your tribal association, because of your religion, because of your political beliefs. These people have nowhere else to go. If they go home, they will die. There's no two ways of it. So, I know what brought them here, and I think that they have much to offer us, and we owe them at least a fair start in their new land. Thank you.
Chair, recognizes Representative Portler for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, men and women of the House. I've been here before biennial budgets. They've all been different. I've been told by people way more experienced than I have that the state budget is a lot like a slot machine. Most of us don't really know very much about what goes into it. Very few of us have a stomach for making it, but almost all of us have an opinion about how it tastes and how it could taste better. I know a whole lot has been thrown into this budget that I really don't like, and not that much that I do like. I know it's too early to know how it's going to taste, but I'm very worried about bad heartburn. But right now, Mr. Speaker, I need to tell you how I feel about something that just can't wait. There are several thousand new Mainers in our state, or in this country legally, who want very much to become security members of our communities and citizens of our state. They are women and men, mothers, fathers, and children. They are multilingual, educated, hardworking. Where they came from, they were teachers, doctors, home care workers, engineers, lawyers, social workers, backyard gardeners, bankers, nutritionists, office workers, cab drivers, and shop owners. But they can't work for money here now because they are seeking asylum, and they cannot work, they may not work without permission papers. So while they wait, they volunteer, making positive contributions to their new community. And when they're not doing that, they're going to school to learn English and more about our culture. Maine is their new home. Up until now, I've been extremely proud of how we've welcomed and provided basic needs to these new Mainers. I'm certainly enjoying the richness that cultural diversity is bringing to my city, and I think we should all be looking forward to the enthusiasm, experience, work ethic, and skills that these folks will shortly be bringing to our state workforce. In Portland, there are 1,000 legal immigrants waiting for permission to work. There are hundreds more in Westbrook and Lewiston and Bangor, and smaller numbers scattered throughout the state. And Mr. Speaker, now I'm worried. These days, the vast majority of general assistance is spent on housing. That means eliminating GA for asylum seekers in Portland could immediately put 1,000 legal immigrants, men, women, and children, out on the streets. 1,000 people. That must be the equivalent of a devastating fire leaving a whole neighborhood in many towns full of homeless people. Or in some cases, 1,000 people would be a whole town homeless. Without the continuing availability of general assistance for all legal immigrants, this budget simply will not work for me or for Maine. It's inedible sausage, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to close, Mr. Speaker. Last night when I got home, I had an email from a constituent that's pretty direct. It says, "Do not betray the democratic ideals you were elected to uphold by voting for a budget that forces people out of their homes. The outcomes of this action will define the way I vote during the next election cycle. Virtually all my friends and acquaintances feel exactly the same way. Good luck to you and to those families whose fate rests in your hands." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair, thanks, Representative from South Berwick, Representative Beavers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I just want to quote one verse or one chapter of the New Testament. Matthew 25, verse 40. "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me." Thank you.
Chair, recognizes Representative Westbrook, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, with the men of the House. I want to thank my good friend, Representative Hudson, for bringing this motion. It is incredibly important. And the only thing I'm going to add to this that hasn't been said yet is that we need to understand that the only way to preserve general assistance for asylum seekers and for other people lawfully present is to get this language in the budget. I think it's important for people to understand that this is already paid for in the budget, in the report that many of us voted on just a few minutes ago. When we moved that budget, we voted for the money that would pay to continue GA for the people seeking general assistance. But what happened was that the recent court decision that many of us are aware of made it clear that we also need the language that Representative Hudson has put forward in the budget to protect the temporary support for asylum seekers who are waiting for permission to work. These people want to work, they have skills, but because of the limbo that they're in as they're waiting for their applications, they are working. They can't work. This amendment simply provides the necessary language we need in order to provide this support. And Mr. Speaker, as I've thought about this matter over the last few months, and I've thought about it a lot over the past few months, obviously my concern and my worry is for the people that my friend the representative from Portland just mentioned. You know, there's well over 1,000 people, not just in my community, but throughout the state, who really, really need this help in order to prevent homelessness and take people out of, or help them combat the devastating poverty that they live in now. But you know, every time I think about this, ultimately, there are other thoughts that come into my head, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every time I think about this, I think about my ancestors, my people, who came over here over a century ago. And I remember being a kid and sitting at my grandparents' kitchen table and listening to their stories. And my people, like the ancestors of many of you, I'm sure, came to America because they were fleeing. Fleeing oppression, fleeing civil war, fleeing famine, fleeing poverty. They were in flight. They came to America fleeing those things. And when they got here, it wasn't easy for them either. It was hard. But they embraced America. And America, sometimes with hesitation, embraced them back. And they became interwoven into the fabric of this country. And my immigrant ancestors built this country. And that makes me proud. They worked, and they labored, and they swept, and they swung hammers, and they drove tractors, and they built roads, and they taught school, and they took care of the sick. And when the time came, they went off to war to the very places where they had come from, and put their lives on the line to protect the freedom that they found here. And the people that we are trying to help here today are the same. They are exactly the same. There is no difference between today's immigrants and my people, my ancestors who came here. And they are the key to the future of this state and of this nation. In my community, the children of immigrant families sat side by side in schools with my kids. And that makes sense, because their future and the future of my children are intertwined and they cannot be separated. And the continued greatness of America and the future prosperity of Maine will depend on the achievement of all those children. My children, your children, all the children of Maine, no matter where they were born or where their parents were born. And Mr. Speaker, we cannot turn our backs on people who so desperately need a little temporary support to survive. And let's be honest, what they need does not cost a lot. And as I said, it's already in the budget. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, when push comes to shove, it isn't about the money. At the end of the day, we cannot turn our backs on these people who so desperately need our help. Because we can't dishonor our own people, our ancestors who struggled and worked and fought to make sure that we could be here and stand here today. And I cannot dishonor them by turning my back on people who are just like they were. The people we're trying to help here are just like us. They are just like us. And if we turn away from them, we are turning away from ourselves and turning away from all the people who brought us here. Mr. Speaker, the generations that came before us are watching what we do here today. Today's generation is depending on what we do here today. The generations of the future will judge us based on what we do here today. And I hope we can make them all proud and support the people who need our help. Thank you.
Chair, can I first report Representative Barnsworth?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, others have spoken certainly much more eloquently than I can. All I can say is that my vote in support of this amendment is driven by my Christian values. Jimmy Carter, our former president. Please support. Amen.
Chair recognizes Representative Portland, R2 Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House. On the afternoon of October 9, 2012, a young Pakistani girl boarded her school bus on the northwest Pakistani district of Swat. A gunman asked for her by name. He then pointed a pistol at her and he fired 3 shots. One bullet hit the left side of her forehead, traveled under her skin to the length of her face, and then went into her shoulder. That same little girl managed to survive. She is currently receiving asylum in Great Britain. In December of last year, she won the Nobel